Good morning, everyone. To everyone who's tuning in live from the East Coast of the U.S. and good day to everyone, regardless of where you are around the world. My name is Josh Epstein. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Aras, and it's my pleasure to be moderating this panel discussion today. So this is the first in a series called Pulling the Digital Thread, where we'll be exploring trending topics and technologies that are shaping the engineering space, digital manufacturing, product lifecycle management, and the broader digital enterprise, all from the perspective of the modern notion of a connected digital thread. Our goal here is to bring together some of the brightest minds and independent thinkers to exchange ideas and opinions while having some fun. So we're streaming on a delay today to make sure we get good high quality audio. So while we won't be answering questions live, please do feel free to use the chat bar and post your questions. Even better, go to LinkedIn. So we'll be monitoring LinkedIn. All of our panelists are very socially active, so I'm sure they'll be watching and commenting as well. Please use the hashtag pulling the digital thread in your posts so that we can organize and everyone can find the conversation. So let's dig in. I'm pleased to be joined by four of the most influential thinkers in this space, and I'm relatively new to PLM, and reading their online content has definitely helped me form my own perspective on the space. So we've got Lionel, Grealou, Oleg, Shilovitsky, Brion, Carroll, and Rob McAveney. So I'll just do a brief intro to each, but then ask them to, by way of intro, just talk about what they think that truly the hottest, most exciting topic is in this space of PLM and digital engineering, as well as what is the most overhyped topic. So let's start with Lionel Grealou, or Leo. Leo is a seasoned PLM leader with a leading global consumer brand. He also manages his own consulting group, Xlifecycle. He's a prolific writer. He writes great content out on digitalengineering.com and his own blog at virtualdigital.com. So Leo, let's start with you. What do you think the most exciting topic today is in PLM and digital engineering, and what's the most overhyped?
Thanks, Josh, and thanks for having me. I'm very pleased to be here today. So welcome all to this first episode of the series, I understand. So yeah, the most exciting topics. That's an interesting question. So I guess there's lots of new technologies that are potentially a bit hyped as well, but I can see that there is a strong focus on data. And obviously, every time we discuss about data, AI, machine learning, all these topics come back to the front end of the discussion because they are exciting topics. They are things that the board members, the exec of many OEMs are keen to explore, and focusing on how we can bridge different cross-functional silos, not just in engineering, but in procurement, in finance, and manufacturing, and so on and so forth. So I think that's really a topic that is not just of interest of mine, but of interest of every executive of OEMs and software vendors and integrators and so on and so forth. So I think this is about analytics, right? So how do we make sure we can get more value from our data independently of where it sits sometimes? So it could be not necessarily in proper PLM systems, but as we grow this understanding of our data, we can make better with our processes and obviously our software solutions that are driving how the company and the teams are operating, even across companies with our supplier chain. So I think to me, this is all about how PLM is evolving from focusing on engineering data, integrating hardware and software, now integrating hardware, software, and as well formulated product in some industries, and then looking at how we can make the best of our analytics. Right? So I think that's really what is exciting in the PLM space. In
Great.
Short, yeah.
How about overhyped? What do you think the most overhyped topic is?
Well, I think AI, obviously, right? It sounds like I'm repeating myself, but it is a very hyped topic, right? Gartner would say it's at the top of the curve, right? So we still have to understand the value and the opportunities and the risk that it brings to us as well, right? So how do we make the best decision in order to drive these data analytics forward and the processes that come and support this analytics? I think there is as well always something that is on my mind around solutions, right? So there's a lot of solutions around there to not just in the AI space, but in the PLM and ERP space. And I consider ERP or part of ERP as being a PLM topic as well in most of my discussions or engagements. And there's never one size fits all, right? There's always a combination of solutions. So how do we integrate this? How do we look at trying to join the dots before we configure and over customize sometimes these dots, right? How do we prioritize? How do we make sure we have a comprehensive set of solutions, an ecosystem, and not just one size fits all or one solution for all? And again, it might depend on the industry, the size of the company. So I appreciate there are nuances. It's not like one, even in the answer I'm giving, there's multiple answers to multiple contexts, right? A small company will have obviously the need for one solution, and that's it, right? Big companies or medium and big companies will look at an ecosystem of solutions, including Excel, including things that are not necessarily very mature. So that I would say is something that often we have to go back to reality. One solution will not fix all. We have to look at how the business can evolve and adapt to those to adopting these solutions.
Yeah. I think that's recurring themes I'm sure we'll hear from others as well. So Oleg, let's turn to you. So Oleg Shilovitsky is the founder of OpenBOM, a cloud-native product data management solution. He's also the principal author at, I think, probably one of the industry's most read blogs, Beyond PLM. So Oleg, same question out to you. What do you think what's hot, what's not, what's the most overhyped? What are your thoughts?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Josh, and pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I think the most interesting thing that happens in PLM and in the digital solutions today is a transformation of processes that are transforming from document-oriented processes to data-oriented processes, because that's also the outcome of the paradigm that we lived for the last 30 years. Like traditionally, we created design using CAD system, saved it as a file, and then tried to do something with these files. I mean, Excel is just the outcome of the same paradigm, because file folders, Excels, that's the natural. And people in the engineering space were heavily influenced by this paradigm. But I think it's getting to the point where it's preventing companies from being more efficient. And this is where I'm very much connected to the value of data. So we need to break this boundary of documents to be more granular, start operating with data, and see how we can use data for decision process management and for decision support. And then everything else is the outcome of data. So the same thing when the first internet service was focusing on pages, and then everyone asked why Google is crawling these pages like crazy and then trying to figure out what is on those pages. I think the same thing is happening in digital transformation of engineering and manufacturing companies, trying to remove these envelopes that are inefficient and try to get data and operate it. So I think it's a very powerful thing, and especially important because we are getting all technologies that were developed for the last 10, 15 years and focusing on data. So everything that we need to do is just to see how it applies to in the context of manufacturing companies and engineering disciplines.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I'm definitely going to ask you more on the data in a moment, but yeah, thanks.
And about overhyped, you see, I'm trying to stay kind of away from the general hype. Like, yeah, there are hyped technologies, and everyone is talking about them. I think what is very overhyped or very overestimated topic is the importance of organizational change and organizational transformation for successful implementations. So here is, again, it goes in balance, but very often it sounds like if we will work harder, we will make it work. So just make it a little bit harder. Like just bring C-level, create a plan, get everyone aligned, be sure that you're getting to the right results, and then guess what? It's like trying to make a very old Windows touch device to work correctly. Guess what? We tried hard. I tried hard to answer those calls. It never worked for me. And then I got iPhone, and suddenly it started to work. So, I mean, just the perspective. As much as we try harder something that is not doesn't work, we might not getting successful with this thing. So just the perspective.
I like that. I like that. Just go work harder. That's overhyped. Cool. Well, I'm sure we'll come back to that one. Brion, let's turn to you. So Brion Carroll's a digital transformation executive with 30 years experience in sales and business development. He's worked with some of the top technology companies in the space. He's also the founder and CEO of Sabrion Digital Group. He publishes great content on his LinkedIn feed. That's actually how I met him. I was reading some of his stuff and just reached out and asked him to join us today. So, Brion, same question out to you. What's hot? What's maybe overhyped?
Yeah, so I mean, I like the word you used first, which was exciting, and I think I get excited about conversations, and my family will bear witness to some of the conversations that I think are exciting and roll their eyes, right? But I do remember 30 years ago when this was exciting, right? When we would go to tech conferences and there would be, executive officers all over the place, any product company you could imagine. And now it seems like some of these companies send people that are just doing nothing. They're just like, hey, Cindy, who's that guy we have in the basement making the laminate for the ID? Oh yeah, that Phil? Yeah, I got a tech conference I want to send him to, And then I think the hype or the allure has plateaued a little bit, and we're all kind of focusing lean as an organization. I think every organization is focusing lean. But one of the kind of exciting things, and I say that again with a little bit of eye rolling, but is cloud. And if the company is not thinking cloud, now I'm not talking about the cloud 20 years ago, right? I'm talking about the cloud of today, what that means. We see a lot of this in our personal lives. Like if you have on-demand streaming services, that isn't just a virtual movie theater. It has a lot of intelligence and integration behind it that really connect our worlds. So the cloud of today allows companies to, we talked about this many times, build anywhere, design anywhere, service anywhere. We can only achieve that as if we have a great cloud strategy. If we do not have a cloud strategy, so it also opens the Pandora's box to cybersecurity, which if an organization is not thinking cybersecurity, they will based on the risks that's out there. And then the most overhyped thing, I would say, I'm going to agree with my colleagues here, the AI, generative AI. It's just not ready yet for prime time. And I don't think a lot of organizations, Oleg talked on it, the data quality that's out there. You don't want to put crap in and get some intelligent blob on the outside. This is the way the company. So it's definitely the future, 100%. It just has to evolve a little bit better with the organizations as they mature as well. So
that's great, and I am almost guarantee we're going to talk more about AI in this conversation. So, all right, Rob. So Rob McAveney, who has the pleasure or the curse of just being a few office doors down from me, and so I've been routinely pester him with questions and great ideas. But Rob spent his career in PLM with nearly 20 years at Aras, now serving as the Chief Technology Officer. He publishes frequently on the Aras blog, and like I said, is my neighborhood thought leader. So Rob, thanks for joining today. And same question out to you. What do you think's the most exciting thing out there, and what do you think's most overhyped?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So I'll concur with Brion a bit that the cloud is the most exciting thing, but maybe with a slightly different spin. My thought process is that it's the cloud connected digital thread that is actually the most exciting thing out there. It is the connectivity that we can achieve through cloud mechanisms to securely connect systems and data in ways that we were never able to do before in a distributed on-premise kind of model. The ability to bring supply chain partners and other business partners into the mix and connect their data to the digital thread. The ability to take our data and link it through AI and cloud-based analytics services. Those things are really going to provide a lot of value over time. And then as we keep going out further, we're able to bring in external data sources for component libraries and regulatory compliance kinds of requirements, material databases, all these things that can augment our existing digital thread with new data that's out there on the cloud. And I think all this comes together to help us build a more secure digital thread that's more connected than ever before. And so from that perspective, it isn't just, hey, I got PLM on a cloud and it's secure. It's now able to connect to many more types of data and different business partners. If I look at the things that are overhyped, I tend to see this idea of the industrial metaverse as a topic that while interesting, maybe has a little bit more. There's a little bit more to it than what you see in fancy demos. We see ideas of augmented reality and virtual twins and 3D everywhere, and this is all very good and very exciting. But the whole point behind these kinds of use cases is, I think, what Oleg was getting at, which is it's the data that's important. Right? It isn't the visualization necessarily. There are lots of different ways to visualize this data, and 3D is a good one. But the hard part is getting the data right. It's getting the right versions of that geometry. It's connecting it to other data sources that provide for reliability and quality and sustainability kinds of analyses on the data that you're seeing in 3D. That's actually the star of the show. It's the data. It's not the 3D itself. And so, my perspective is there's lots of ways to visualize this, and sure, the metaverse is one way to do that. But the goal should always be get the data right and avoid the hype of this just one different way of looking at it.
That's great. Excellent. So I think it's a great way to introduce all of you and your perspectives. What I'm going to do now is just sort of ask each of you a question, but then invite you to sort of respond. And so, Brion, let's start with you. And you're the one here that comes from I think a broader perspective. You're less sort of hardcore PLM. You got this perspective.
Yeah, kind of like Rob's comment. He set me up. He T-balled me. Yeah.
So as you think beyond beyond PLM, beyond just engineering, but into the full life cycle, manufacturing, execution, supply chain, and broader digital transformation in the enterprise, when you think about this concept, or you talk about the notion of digital thread to your clients, and what's your perspective on how far along they are? What challenges is the typical enterprise struggling with, and really what do they need to do to realize this potential of connected data? Other than go work harder, and I'm sure.
I mean, a lot of organizations are embarking on this. It's kind of like the tech version of the circle of life from the Lion King, but for products. You know what I mean? It's kind of the higher looking down at the entire ecosystem, contemplating level one processes. I mean, most of the times, and you guys have been doing this for a long time, right? We came in talking about CAD or talking about bombs or talking about storage or change management. It was still very siloed. The ability with digital thread gets to kind of open the communication channel to executives that are more dealing with level one, level two returns. So it brings, I think Rob said it perfectly, right? Where is the value? What am I looking at as far as the tapestry of my organization? Where do I see advantages, but also what are the operability and dependability between these organizations? So is everyone doing it? Again, I think COVID really messed us up in the funding of projects in general, and the way product companies have now been forced to do more with less people. It's almost insane. But it is what it is. I think that stalled us a little bit. The innovators didn't stop thinking, but the companies stopped giving us real benchmarkable proof of concepts and scalable pilots to impede its growth. I think it would have been a wildfire had we started talking in these dialogues with the aggressiveness before COVID.
Where do you think, though, there is, and that makes complete sense of what's the impediment? Where are the early successes? Where do you think the thread is in fact starting to connect? What areas are you seeing?
I mean, again, it's all based on priority. You have to sit down and come up with a playbook. I think a lot of times we used to like to run into these demonstratable proofs, but now it's a little bit more prioritization and readiness. I think Oleg talked really nice about the organizational change. Who's ready to start adopting this, kind of construct, this connectivity, this thread, if you will, and then where is the value? What are the business imperatives, the strategic advantages that I as an organization am going to witness doing this incrementally, right? If you're just, let's boil the ocean, no, I just need to know where to fish, right? So again, it has to start with priority. Obviously, some of the big wins are coming in from, cloud type thinking with connecting my CAD to change management, right? This kind of release, what I'll call process planning to manufacturing. That is a big push right now, process planning. But again, it's all priority.
I'll turn it out to the crowd here, the panel. Thoughts on on where are these connections happening, where are they not happening? Yeah, please, Leo, go ahead.
I can expand a bit on that. I mean, you mentioned the broader PLM scope. That's always an interesting topic, right? So how broad is PLM and what is PLM? So I include PLM and ERP and MES and PDM, I was about to say, in the so-called wider PLM scope, right? So I mentioned PLM twice because sometimes it's confused with the tool, right? As soon as we say PLM, it's like the tool. But to me, it's the end-to-end. So I would agree with Brion and your point around how do we feed that downstream, whatever downstream is, right? So it could be procurement, helping with supplier selection. It could be finance, looking at how much the products are performing in the field, when do we need to decommission or delist certain products to replace them with the new ones, and how much write-off is that going to imply. So I think to me that's really a key factor of PLM. This is where I started with the introduction of talking about data analytics, and this is where I think AI and other technologies can help. Even if the data source is not that clean and processes are not that great and PLM systems are not that not so much connected, let's say, how can we make sense of our data so we can prioritize? So as you were saying, Brion, trying not to boil the ocean, how do we prioritize? We need some KPIs. We need to have a scorecard. We need to understand where we want to focus our business change priorities, as Oleg was saying earlier, right? So otherwise we will achieve nothing. So how do we prioritize this is down to how much data we have to understand the pain points and the areas of improvement that we want to prioritize.
Yeah, I tend to see that companies are both immature in terms of data connectivity and not aggressive enough. I spend a lot of time in front of customers, and I see plans for their future roadmap in the PLM space, and it frustrates me when I see, yes, in 2026 we're going to put a basic PLM to ERP connector in place, and my heart drops, and I say, guys, I think we can do better than that, right? There are many companies out there that are innovating in a very rapid manner, are really exploring the ideas of data connectivity at a much a higher order than basic connectivity between two point systems. We can do better in terms of setting higher goals and planning backward. Don't start in your own current reality and say I can make incremental steps towards data connectivity. Set an aggressive goal 2 or 3 years out that you'll have connectivity across all these systems, and building a real digital thread, and work backward from that aggressive goal that's the advice I tend to give companies.
Excellent. Oleg, any thoughts?
Yes, it is. I think it's a very important topic of data connectivity and data silos in the companies, because we're dealing with disconnected islands of information. Now, the priority, as I always trying to help companies to set their priority, depends on the type of manufacturing process. Depends on the type of manufacturing process, they might prioritize particular connections. Like if you in the engineering to order, you will have a priority on the certain connection that go in the engineering processes downstream. And if you, for example, in the mass production, you will be focusing more on supply chain. What I think in terms of helping companies to prioritize in the most broader scope I see now, and the most, I would probably call it low-hanging fruit, is as a companies are, complexity is the biggest problem that happens in product development. So all products today, it's a kind of combination of electronics, mechanics, mechanical and software pieces, and some cloud services that are running around. So to manage this design complexity is the first digital thread that companies need to create or connect. Let's figure out electronics and mechanics and software kind of playing together and connected together. If you remember in the good old days, like 20 years ago, it was a question of interoperability, right? So how we can get files, export them, and understand someone else importing these files. So we are moving to data, so data needs to be connected. Let's figure out how MCAD is connected to ECAD, to some PCB design, to some software with the right builds, with the right revisions, with right pieces of information, like Rob said. It's not only like visualize it, oh, it's cool, but do you have a right version of software in this piece that is visualized in a very cool way? If it's not, it will not work. So those kind of things I would say prioritizing. And the second most also prioritized and overhyped is a question of integrating between PLM, ERP, and MES, where I think PLM and ERP, it was for a very long time the pain point for companies. And many companies tried to manage it by the strategy, let's separate them, okay? So let's put a wall, let's send the data and forget about this. That doesn't work today for multiple reasons. The engineering to order requires tight integration, cannot work over the wall. Configured products requires very high integration between engineering and manufacturing environments. So it's also very important to prioritize it. And then I want to come and also mention the same that Rob said. We live by the power of our connections outside. So everyone wants to know where I can buy this part. And everyone wants to know if this part is obsolete or this supplier is bad or something happens in this world which makes our operation, like we cannot operate in the closed silo. We need to be connected outside. So I think those are connectivity options will be prioritized, and this is important for company to switch from sending documents to connecting those pieces together.
That's great. And thanks all. Great discussion. And I think that I want to turn to Leo because something you said, well, all of you said, but Oleg, you particularly talked about the in the PLM process, kind of connecting of MCAD, ECAD, and kind of the diverse teams that are involved in the design process. So Leo, you wrote a really great piece covering the Renaissance acquisition of Altium, and you proposed this scenario where we see the rise of specialized PLM solutions for ECAD lifecycle management, but also the potential for seamless integrations with traditional PLM, with application lifecycle management, software lifecycle management, and this sort of broader management of integrated systems. So how do you see organizations leveraging digital thread or just the practical approaches to managing this diverse set of ecosystems, of tools, of teams, of data? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a good question, and then there's maybe multiple answers depending on the context. Again, as Oleg was mentioning, if it's concurrent engineering or contract manufacturing, depending how this is sourced. But I guess ultimately it is. ECAD, electrical CAD is a space where niche solutions are required because it's very complicated data, the way that the 3D, the 2D, the routing, the different layers of the data needs to be connected is very specific to this topic. Similarly to piping or tubing or some other hardcore CAD topics I've seen in the past. Not so much recently, but at least in the past when I was doing a lot more CAD products. But I would say it's interesting to see how these niche CAD PDM solutions, if I may say, with respect, are evolving into very broader tranche of cross-functional capability. So it's not just about CAD. I mean, it's about the cost of the CAD. It's about the weight. It's about the sustainability, right? Many attributes that are not just owned by engineering or by R&D, but are very cross-functional as such, from finance to procurement to and so on and so forth, right? Including project management and be able to track deliverables from suppliers. So I think this is what I've caught my attention with the Altium acquisition. Is this an opportunity for an engineering player to make a niche CAD/PDM solution, again with respect, PLM, we may say, solution to be more integrated, but as well to cover a lot more functional capabilities than just, I may say, CAD design and CAD validation, right? So it's really, it could have its own BOM. It could have, so it's really building a PLM solution that is specific to ECAD. So again, how will that then integrate with the rest, the MCAD, the software side, and the formulated side? I know we don't discuss it too much in discrete organizations, obviously, but there's lots of new things that are becoming even more complicated. So it's an interesting balance between a generic versus a more specific or dedicated CAD and PDM solution.
Throw it out to the team. Any thoughts on whether it's ECAD or just the broader, more diverse set of design processes that happen continuously or concurrently?
I think the important opportunity that we see here is to develop services that can pull data seamlessly from different sources. So in such a way, people will be seamlessly connecting data points, because engineers will continue to work as they work. And again, someone will be designing PCB using Altium, and someone will be making mechanical design. So somehow, and someone will be focusing on software. So somehow, these sources of information need to be combined together and presented to a company in the collaborative and cohesive fashion. So this data visibility is important. You cannot synchronize this information events like, okay, let's release this document, or let's release this part, or let's release this Gerber file. It just will not work, but this is a traditional document-oriented approach. If when I speak to companies, they're asking questions, so how we release documents? I said, first, you need to share information in the way so people will say it can be released. And then you can pull a trigger and you can release the data, and the documents can be attached to this data, but you're not releasing a document, because even if you have two types of documents, what will be released first, electronics or mechanical? Like that's very hard to answer. But because systems are coming siloed, because Altium has its own PDM system, and whatever, and X might have their own PDM system. So these processes cannot work independently if you think about cohesive, connected set of information. So that's why one of the visions and strategy that I had is how we can pull this data seamlessly using web services, and then provide this information in a collaborative fashion to everyone for whatever decision they want to make. So that's what I think will help to create those connected processes, rather than trying to prove, oh, my event is coming early, and release part file and then release Gerber file. That will not work. So in my view.
Great, Brian, Rob, any thoughts here?
I heard the word niche a few times in Leo's discussion there, and that tells me that the target is moving, right? So what's niche today is mainstream tomorrow, and it is we have to consider the data that we're connecting to is probably going to be changing over the lifespan of the product development process. Especially in electronics, we see very fast-moving kinds of changes that are driving advanced technology in everything we do. We see specialized chips for AI workloads. We see chiplets and other kinds of emerging technologies that are driving different data that we have to track, and we don't only have to consider, okay, how are we going to store all this data, right? How do we put it all in a PDF to Oleg's point and release it? That's probably not what we want to do, but we have to consider that we're going to have a different shape of data based on these different systems and the emerging technologies that are driving different types of product and different design that's being done. So we need to be agile, we need to be nimble, we need to consider that the data is going to evolve over time. We need to build that into our systems and processes to be able to live up to that challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's four pillars in any organization. It's people, process, technology, and data, right? And if we're having or carrying those conversations, again, at a very low level, we'll fail to get the momentum in the enterprise solution that we all are talking about, right? If we're talking high-level enterprise, overarching business processes and returns that again. So I think it's beyond its stationary, static, analog self, right? So those are the things that I think we're all talking about. So I mean.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and we didn't talk much about the software element, but I want to sort of maybe turn the conversation over to Rob, ask you some questions, and I know you think a lot about kind of the software layer as well, which is an increasingly important part of any modern product. But Rob, you spoke last month at the ACE, the Aras user conference, and I think you might have coined the term requirements as a service, and as you think about modern design and development processes, I think software is a perfect example. Agile development and kind of managing requirements and as user stories and kind of being very agile in the way that design teams are working together. Can you talk about the basics of how requirements management needs to evolve in this evolution of highly connected, extensible threads?
Absolutely. And I think the first thing we all need to agree on is that we're going to have more requirements than ever before. Oleg talked about the complexity of products and how it keeps getting worse and worse in terms of the functions that we have to track. We're also seeing huge inroads in software-defined products, meaning that the requirements coming from the software layer are getting bigger and bigger by the day. It's really can be orders of magnitude higher than what we've traditionally done. And then from the outside, we're seeing new sources of requirements, be they regulatory requirements or sustainability types of requirements. We're getting pressures from the societal side of things to have additional requirements that we have to track. And all this is coming in the context of this expanded view of our digital engineering ecosystem. So connectivity across all those systems that we need to conceive of, to design, to manufacture, to test, to release to customers and operate. All these things are coming together to bring this space of requirements into a world where it's all kind of it's all interrelated and it is cross-disciplinary and all the way across the product lifecycle. So we're getting all these requirements from different places, and now we're seeing more and more that this idea of market feedback, customer feedback, is driving right into these feedback loops that also drive requirements. So the space of requirements is getting bigger and bigger than ever before, and requirements are coming at us from new angles. And the thought process behind this is, okay, how do we adapt to this? right? We know that no individual human is going to be able to read and understand and bring all these requirements together into one cohesive idea or set of how a product might be designed or how a product evolves based on these requirements. We know that's not possible. We also know that writing all these things down is a huge challenge, especially in ways that we've traditionally done it, where different authors in different disciplines across the different phases of the product lifecycle are writing requirements to different standards and have different tooling to write them down. So it's really, we have to move away from this idea of textual requirements into more structured and machine readable models that leave little to no ambiguity in what the requirement actually means, such that we can then leverage AI to be able to take those requirements and turn them into something more useful in terms of the product design. We know that requirements coming from all different sources have to be connected to that digital thread, and they have to be discoverable from one part of the digital thread to another. And this is really the beginning of requirements as a service. It's never going to be coming from one spot. You have to be thinking about how someone in design can be fed requirements from the operational phase of the product lifecycle. And we should also know that the requirements are coming from both internal and external sources. So it's no longer just a group of tech writers writing down, or systems engineers writing down requirements in a room down the hall. These requirements are coming from regulatory bodies. They're coming from customers. They're coming from suppliers in some cases, and contract manufacturing partners. They're coming from all over the place, and we should acknowledge that internal and external makes a difference in terms of how we consume those requirements. So with all this happening now, we have to have much more mature governance processes about how we know that we're working towards the right set of requirements for the context of what we're working on. And when we think of requirements as a service, it is, hey, I need to have a way anywhere I sit in the product lifecycle. The work I do has to be able to rely on requirements being delivered in a consistent manner, in an auditable fashion, to make sure that I'm getting the right things at the right time. And we have to get past this idea of the requirements can all be collated into an Excel sheet or a PDF document. No, the requirements are going to be coming at us all the time. And if we change our thought process from requirements in a document to requirements as a service, I think everyone's going to be better served moving forward in this world we're living in, where product complexity and new sources of everything is coming at us all the time. So that's the idea of requirements as a service.
All right. It's a lot. Team, thoughts on that?
Sounds good. I think this is part of the challenge, right? I would say, and you mentioned AI, I think that, to me, that is where technology can help us make sense of the standards or the regulations or the changes of regulations, and give us the information for people to make decisions, right? So obviously it won't replace the decision, because with AI, there's always a question around the product can't design itself, right? Or the requirements can't write it themselves, right? So we still have to validate that this is correct. But I would say requirements, compliance, and probably I will add as well simulations. And the question or the point earlier about CAD but other type of simulation as well, not just CAD. I think are areas where this kind of technology can help to bring us the ability to compute large set of data, large across functions, across suppliers, understand how we can make better decisions, but as well appreciate the limitations of those technologies, right? So yes, requirements can be adapted based on standards, so we don't miss any, but we still have to have someone to assess what is required and what's the best option, right? Now, can we link that to a simulation engine or configuration engine that can translate that from a BOM perspective? What does that mean? EBOM, MBOM, and whatever other BOM, but as well validate that there is no gaps and that the machine doesn't approve his own design, if I may say. Okay, exaggerate a bit, but just to say where are the guardrails that we need to put in place so that we don't create a monster and then data overflow may become difficult to realign, so to speak, right? So I mean, it's back to the analytics. Are we able to measure it in the first place? Are we able to, do we have the right metrics and the right KPIs that define what we want to achieve? Otherwise, we can just throw technology at it and make it even more complicated to undo or simplify going forward, right?
Yeah. At the risk of throwing more technology, and Brion, I'm curious. You've written a lot about digital twins, and we have a digital twin as sort of the cousin or the uncle of the digital thread. But I'm curious, like what twins can be a source of requirements, right? So whether it's supply chain twins or manufacturing twins, curious where you're seeing twins evolve and kind of provide input into the design process. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, well, it's digital twin for the most part right now is being effective in the manufacturing process, right? So it's effective manufacturing, connected workers, emulation, commissioning, all of the things that we see operationally that are the benefit to having a quality and constructed digital twin while on operations. So that's the biggest plus. When you look at requirements, whether it's getting requirements from a service ticket, right? Someone in the field saying this is broken, how do I fix it? Do you go through these decision tree and then helping them through the training of trying to fix it themselves before we send out a technician and they end up paying for it. So a lot of those requirements, I think Rob said it, they come at us in different contexts. The beautiful thing about something like Chat or Copilot that can take these kind of vague inputs and create some constructive, structured model that can then be passed on to someone else is the biggest advantage that we could take, right? Because a lot of people in the field, or if someone's giving us a system of interest or a supplier saying, I need something built that is X, the faster we can get to a decision, that's what takes so long. We just sit there. We're in a purgatory. We get the information, then we just sit in this purgatory of requirements or data, and then we don't know what to do with it. Everybody knows that's where we need to step up and do the art of the possible, as Rob was talking about. So,
great.
Yeah.
No, and Oleg, I want to turn to you, but maybe I think the subject of AI, and I like requirements purgatory, kind of maybe the potential for AI to lead an organization out of that special hell. You've written extensively about the primacy of data management, of federated sources of intelligence as it relates to empowering AI in PLM, digital engineering, and the broader digital enterprise. So let's hit it. Let's hit AI. Like, what are the relevant applications of AI that you see leading organizations experimenting with, and let's look at it, which is a lifespan in current technology cycles. But let's look out 24 months and see what are companies going to be doing with AI, whether it's requirements or other areas of this space.
Well, first of all, 24 months is a very tricky prediction. So I think if I would be asking someone 24 months ago to predict ChatGPT trajectory, no one would be doing it. So that's why I will stay away from predictions, but I just want to pick on the couple of things that Rob and Brion mentioned, because I think this is where the power of current applications of AI can be very useful. So if I think about requirements and think about requirements in the holistic way, so I think any connection in the digital thread keeps some level of requirements. If this is a customer requirement to designer, if it's a designer requirements of mechanical design to electronics, if this is electronics to software, if this is everybody together to some manufacturing or supply chain. So every connection has some requirements, Now, being able to understand these requirements and validate it can be a very powerful thing. And also, not how to combine all of them to Excel file that no one will read, but create it in the way someone will be able to understand. And here is some practical validation. If you go to ChatGPT and ask to create bill of materials of electric bike, you will get a decent breakdown of components. And then in the second trial, you ask, no, I want a snow electrical bike. And you will see that ChatGPT language model is reacting on your requirements that you want to ride in snow. It's not only putting snow tire, it's also taking some components that are low temperature oriented and some other things. So that's the biggest opportunity of understanding requirements and then taking it and translating it between people and components in the digital thread. Now, where is the biggest problem that I see, and that's why it's hard for me to make prediction. Everyone likes to speak about AI and opportunities of AI these days, so where I completely agree, it's a very high level of hype. So now, the moment of time you come to someone and saying, okay, great, you like AI, can I get your data and make some experiments? Everyone is getting cold feet, right? So that is where the current interesting conversations about AI is happening. If someone is trying to sell you AI, first question I always ask, like, where did you get the data for your AI? Because if there is no, like, this is especially for people that are trying to sell AI in defense, because no one will give them data. So it's a kind of validation mark. So those are things that I think we will see a lot of interesting variations of AI application, and I'm using it by myself. I think the understanding of textual information and making some reasoning is the most powerful thing that I've seen so far. And I look forward how to create bill of materials based on the textual representation. But the biggest question, how much data I need to ask from a customer in order to create the right bill of materials. So that's where it is becoming very interesting, but connecting it to requirements, like all these interactions is a kind of requirement. If you can manage it, that can be very exciting moment, but we are still not, we are not there yet. So.
Yeah, and there's also a difference between data science, right, and master data and algorithmic type of constructs of an array versus an intelligent, right, persona, understanding. I think Oleg called out a lot of things, right? When we use chat or Copilot or whatever we use in our personal lives, when we start putting things in, the machine is the intelligent entity is learning our persona. And it says, well, I know you meant this. I know you meant this. And you asked me this. I'm going to start giving you this. So I think there's a difference between data science, which is 1 + 1 = 2. And then there's AI, which is 1 + 1 = 3, because it knew that I was missing something in that equation that gave me the recommendation. So.
Yeah. Well, now there's a big difference between, Gen AI and kind of the, ChatGPT and kind of the more boring uses of machine learning and AI, which I'm sure there are, we can go through countless. Rob, you're laughing. Why don't you pick up on that thread?
I'm laughing because somehow those other uses of AI are boring. Yeah, maybe. I really like what the way Oleg suggested that every connection in data is actually a requirement itself, and those connections are in fact what we see in the digital thread. This is the data that we can use to train AI, and I think the future here is in utilizing those connections and growing out our data set in a way that's going to confirm and validate each of those connections such that they can be further used. AI is like anything else. It's garbage in, garbage out, right? You have to have solid data first before you can expect AI to do something interesting for you. I just also wanted to add a little bit about with AI, the fear that AI is going to take over people's jobs, and AI is going to somehow or either it's going to take over my job, or it can't possibly do the things that humans do. And we hear about terms like hallucinations and AI making incorrect inferences, usually based on bad data. But this is nothing new for us in the world we live in, right? We know that humans make mistakes, and we know that humans have hallucinations at times, and so we shouldn't be so concerned about AI getting the wrong answer. We should be more concerned about what are our verification methods to ensure that whatever is produced by this algorithm, this fancy new technology, can actually be verified to meet the requirements that we've set out for it. So let's not be afraid of it. Let's utilize it where it works best. But let's also, trust but verify.
Trust but verify. Leo, I think probably last word. Thoughts on AI? Where and as the practitioner out there, someone who's actually doing this, how are companies actually making use of AI today, and where might all this go?
Well, I think there's still, trust but verify. I like the expression. I think to establish trust, we have to understand what is logical and what is not logical, right? And understand how the machine is learning and so on and so forth. So I don't think opening the hood and trying to deconstruct the engine and making it better and so on and so forth, like a mechanician will do potentially, but more in the sense of understanding the guardrails and where and how to learn, how the machine is learning and unlearning those things. So if we have to identify patterns as we verify the data or the outputs that AI is providing, how do we get them to give all the right bells and whistles to make sure that people don't get removed from that loop, right? So we don't lose that knowledge, or we have sufficient knowledge to feed the engine with proper data. I think as you were saying, Rob, and understanding what data quality means. Because I don't think it's fix the data first and then AI will be sufficiently equipped to make it work later, and neither the reverse. It's not like AI will fix all the crap, if I may say, and later the data will be clean or the process will be clean, will be better, and so on and so forth. I think it's a bit of a try and fail and find and go, I don't know how to say, to go through that journey, right? So I don't think even going forward, unless you're a brand new company, and even if it's a startup, I was about to say, there will be a few corners to be cut, and nothing will be all integrated and so on from day one, right? So how do we address this in any organization? How do we make sure that we don't lose sight of the relevant guardrails based on the type of industry, the type of company, the maturity of it, and the North Star or the strategy that this company wants to evolve. If we target perfect data, we'll never be there, let's be clear. And if we put all our hopes into AIs to design the product, I was saying this a bit in a provocative manner earlier, it won't work either, right? So how do we trade off? How do we find the right balance between those two perspectives?
No,
I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks. And listen, I can't believe it's almost been an hour, so I do want to keep to our time here. But everyone, really appreciate to our panelists for taking the time. Really fun conversation. We just scratched the surface on some of these topics, so I'd love to have you back, either as a team or as a individually in the future. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. This will be available as a recorded version, so feel free to listen to it over and over and forward it on to your friends. And please participate in the online discussion. Follow all of our panelists on their LinkedIn or other social media channels that they're engaged with. And thanks for being part of the conversation today. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.